If you're ready to start on your own feminine journey so your life can have more ease and flow, then this is the video for you because I'm going to be talking about how I created my own feminine journey that took me from being a very hyper independent, stressed out, working all the time, single for 10 years woman to, in about 18 months, being married to a very masculine provider man who adores me, traveling all the time, living in other countries, and actually finding a new career and new purpose in life in a way where life is a lot easier and it flows a lot better. Hi, my name is Amanda Obeya. Welcome to this channel where we talk about how to get everything you want in life without all the extra stress, chaos, and drama that most people are accustomed to. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we have coming out on this channel. And please make sure to give this video a like because it will help us get it in front of more women who need this information. If you're watching this video, then you know that it's no secret that most women, particularly in the Western world where I'm from, are very burned out and stressed out and tired. So let's make sure that we get this out in front of as many women as possible so we can start to heal that. And in healing that, we can heal our relationships, we can heal our careers, our kids can have a better future. Life just gets juicier all around. So you can help us in doing that by giving this a like. And if you'd like to work with me further, we have some really interesting stuff coming out, courses, group coaching programs, things like that on these particular subject matters, and you can find all the information for that below, as well as free manifestation resources. All right, let's get into it. How to start your feminine journey. So let me give you a little bit of a backdrop in case you don't know who I am. So I spent until I think the age of 33, I think it was, operating in a certain way. And that certain way was the fact that I had been conditioned to be very masculine for lots of reasons. The women in my lineage on both sides were actually very hyper independent and controlling. And that, of course, caused not the healthiest romantic relationships. And in an effort to protect me from the world, I got some very common stories. Those stories that I got were your life is going to be harder because you're a woman. Those stories that I got were men are trash, you cannot trust them, or they're dangerous, so you have to protect yourself, and you always have to have control. And the way that you get that control is by making money. That's how you keep yourself safe. So I grew up with those kinds of stories. That's what I was conditioned with in the household. And then, of course, you look at Western society as a whole, and you have the conversation of feminism, which started off as a great thing and has gone totally off the rails, in my opinion, and it's caused all kinds of problems in relationships and in society. But it started with really good intention, and we needed that to happen. So we have that conversation going on. You have like what we see in movies. We see a bunch of stuff about how struggle love is normal. It's not normal, FYI, but that's what we're being told by entertainment in Hollywood. Sex and the City is a great example of that because when I was growing up or in high school, Sex and the City was all the rage. And we're like, everybody wants to be like Carrie Bradshaw. And now as an adult, woman and female, you realize, wait a minute, Carrie Bradshaw had horrible relationships. I do not want to be like Carrie Bradshaw. And even though Sex and the City was a great show and very well written and very funny, boy, was this toxic, right? And because, especially while we're growing up, we don't necessarily have filters to tell us, what's healthy and what's not healthy, and we don't have discernment, then you have a whole generation of women who were growing up on Sex and the City who thought all that was normal, and that's how relationships should be like, particularly the Carrie and Big dynamic. And it's not normal, it's not healthy, and that's not what relationships should be like. So in combination with what I saw at home, because I come from a long line of controlling women because they had to survive, and for various reasons that I can get to in other videos if you want me to. And then in addition to that, you had like society, culture, entertainment, basically exemplifying struggle love in a lot of ways, or exemplifying very unhealthy relationship dynamics. Then you have the conversation of feminism saying you're equal to a man. Guess what happened to me? What happened to me was I was conditioned out of my femininity. And I was essentially told that my femininity makes me vulnerable and it makes me weak. And this manifested in a bunch of different ways. So this would manifest with hormonal issues that I had by the time I was in my early and mid 20s. I actually had like thyroid issues and cysts. It manifested in me overworking. It manifested in me picking relationships that were not necessarily good for me until eventually, through a series of events, it all kind of fell apart. So, what happens to a lot of people, or to a lot of women specifically, is that in order to start their feminine journey, a lot of times women hit a rock bottom of some kind, and I would say any kind of personal growth journey. Unfortunately, a lot of us humans have to hit a rock bottom. In my case, my rock bottom was triggering a lot of ancestral trauma from some stuff that was going on in my career at the time, and also losing, I'm going to put it in air quotes, a business, or at least losing the business and the career as I knew it. Now, that turned out to be a blessing in disguise because I hit my bottom and I realized through a lot of inner work, which I'm going to get to in a second, that I had been conditioned out of my femininity. I had been told things that were not necessarily true in terms of how to make relationships work. And then I had essentially been walking around wearing a mask most of my life, chasing all these external things for love rather than loving myself. So, do you have to hit a bottom to get there? No, I'm just saying most people do hit a bottom, and the bottom usually looks like a career crisis, a health crisis, or a relationship crisis. In my case, it was a career crisis that triggered other things. So the first step is to actually spend some time by your damn self. Especially if you are the type of woman who tends to jump from relationship to relationship, you need some time by yourself. You need some time alone. You need some time in silence. The reason why I say this is because oftentimes we don't even know what it is that we actually believe about relationships. We don't know what it is that we actually believe about being women. We don't know what it is we actually believe about being feminine until we give ourselves the time and space to actually look at it. And what happens to most people, and I see it all the time, is women are so busy giving to everybody else or going for the next achievement in their career or chasing a man or what have you, that they literally have no time for themselves. And when they have no, because they're staying occupied. And when you're occupied, what ends up happening is you have no time for self-reflection. And when you have no time for self-reflection, you can't figure out what it is you actually believe and don't believe about life. When you have no time for self-reflection, you can't come to the conclusion, as I did, that most of the stuff that I believed about femininity, relationships, masculinity, all those things were actually not true. And that's not at all how these things operated. It was just that that's what I had been conditioned into. But we need the time and space to actually work through these things. And for a lot of people, that means sitting still for a while because most people are so busy that they're avoiding this whole conversation to begin with. And then they start finding all these videos like this and they're like, oh, how to manipulate a man into liking you. And honestly, if you haven't done any inner work about your own beliefs, about your own self-love, about any of that, you looking at a video about how to manipulate a man into responding to you is like putting shit on glitter. It's not going to work. So step number one is you need to give yourself that time and space for inner work. Now, inner work is a constant thing. It is not a one and done kind of situation. However, I have found that for most people, they need to give themselves a block of time. Maybe they take a hiatus from dating for a little while, depending on what side of the spectrum you're on, right? So if you're on the side of the spectrum of I'm constantly in a relationship, you, sis, need to take a break, right? If you are on the side of the spectrum where maybe you're post-divorce, maybe you too, sis, might need to take a break for a little while. If you're on the side of the spectrum like I was, which is like, hey, I'm just throwing myself into my career and avoiding intimacy altogether, then maybe your work is a little bit different. You have to decide where you are on that spectrum, but you have to give yourself time and space to actually look through your beliefs of femininity, look at how you're acting. It's really about taking massive amounts of personal responsibility for what's going on in your inner world, because whatever is going on in your inner world is going to be reflected in your outside world. So if you keep attracting, for example, a type of man who doesn't respect you, I was just at a meeting for our spiritual community here in Mexico, and the topic was love. And all kinds of stories started coming up about men disrespecting, having whole other families, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of wild stuff that was going on. If you keep attracting that, number one, there is something in you that is attracted to that. And a lot of people don't like to hear that. And there's lots of reasons for it, but that's a video for another time. And number two, you have to take personal responsibility for what you are attracting into your life and what you are attracted to. Most women, and most men too, but we're talking about feminine journey specifically, most women are attracted to things that are not good for them because almost nobody grew up in a household that had healthy relationship dynamics. Almost nobody. And there's lots of reasons for that. So what ends up happening as adults is we think whatever we saw growing up as kids is normal, right? Or if you have a background where there was perhaps a lot of trauma, like some of my clients or people in my life or people who were in that group, then you're going to think that that kind of trauma is normal because no one ever taught you what a healthy relationship actually looks like. So we do have to take time to reflect on these things and figure out what harmful beliefs we might have about relationship, femininity, or ourselves that are keeping us stuck. And we have to excavate. And as I said, right, lifelong process, but in the beginning, start dedicating time to that and start excavating. When I did this a few years ago, I took about 6 months, and in that time, I was working with a coach who was an expert in neuroscience. And we basically started to excavate everything. That is what I did when I discovered what my actual beliefs were about femininity, money, relationships, the feminine, the masculine. That's when I was able to discover all the harmful patterns I had brought into my life from my family. No shade to them. They are human. They're doing the best that they can. But there was some really unhelpful stuff there that I inherited and picked up. That's when I became aware of those things. Once I started becoming aware of those things, then I was able to be like, wait a minute, do I believe that or do I not believe that? And then I was like, nope, not taking that forward. And then that's when I was able to actually change my behavior. Unless you do inner work like that, it's like I said, you're going to keep finding videos about how to manipulate men, how to get them to give you money, how to get them to do what it is that you want them to do. And it's going to be like putting shit on glitter because ultimately you're still not in love with yourself, or you have not gone underneath the surface into your subconscious. And your subconscious is really the one dictating most of your decisions anyway. It's the one running the show. Most people are running around making relationship decisions like they're drunk. And what we want to do is we want to get to a place where the subconscious, we're aware of what's going on there so we can start having better discernment and making better decisions about what it is that we are choosing to believe in this lifetime. And then we can change our behavior accordingly and we can get to a place of more self-love. So that's number two. Number two on this feminine journey is self-love. And again, it's not a one and done, right? This is a lifetime of work, but that's number two, is starting to cultivate a lot more self-love. So it's interesting to me how I will watch a lot of videos about the feminine journey and everybody's talking about going to go get your nails done and facials and massages and all that stuff is great and it has its purpose. But again, unless you're doing inner work and unless you're doing it from a place of self-love, it's putting glitter on shit, right? So we have to make sure that when we are doing those things, we're doing it from a place of self-love. What does self-love look like? This came up a lot again in the group that we just did it here in Mexico. Self-love looks like integrating all parts of yourself. So for example, one way, and I noticed this today, in which I was not loving myself was in my life, there's a very distinct moment when everything changed for me. So up until the age of about 33, I was operating one way. At 33, I hit a rock bottom. I was able to discover all this stuff. I decided to start acting in a different way. My entire life changed dramatically. I manifested my husband. I manifested moving to another country. I manifested frequent travel. I manifested a new purpose. But I had to, so I see two very distinct areas of life. And I was making the mistake of thinking of the word in Spanish now. Hold on, have to translate in my head. Rechazando is like pushing away or not acknowledging my life before 33. Like, ew, no, I'm not that person because that person wasn't really me. I was wearing a mask. That's like what I had brought on from my family and society and all this stuff. And I was like, ew, gross. Like, I don't want that. But in reality, self-love would integrate all those parts and would look at that past me and be like, okay, well, actually, you learned some really valuable lessons. You learned some really valuable skills. You learned some really valuable tools. How about you take those into the second season of your life and integrate those parts and love the parts of you that you may not necessarily have life. So that would be one example. Another example might be, and this was what I had to work on during that time period where I was sitting still, as I mentioned, is I had to look at all the ways that I was looking for love outside of myself. For most of us, we're still looking for love from our parents in one way or another, and we have to learn to reparent ourselves because our parents were just human. They're not infallible. They make mistakes. They too have their own stuff that they're dealing with. And for many of us, we come from cultures or generations where exploring these things and becoming more conscious and looking at your beliefs was not something that was done. I mean, if you went to go get therapy or go work on yourself, for certain generations or certain cultures, they thought you were crazy. In fact, I'm Latina. If you were a kid and they're like, I'm going to take you to the psychiatrist, it was a threat, right? So we come from generations and cultures where our ancestors and the people that came before us were not doing this kind of work, okay? It was not typical for them to do this kind of work for whatever reason, but that's okay. Now it's up to us to heal that for future generations and also the generations behind us. So one of the things I realized while doing that work, I was still looking for approval, particularly from my mother. And she was probably looking for approval from her mother. And my grandmother was probably looking for approval from her mother. And it was just this cycle that would continue over and over and over again that was not necessarily healthy. So I had to learn to really start loving myself. And when I did that, boom, manifested husband 4 months later. So it moved pretty quickly. So that's number 2, self-love. Number 3, learning the difference between masculine energy and feminine energy. And I will add something further to this. A lot of people talk about masculine versus feminine energy. I will take this a step further. I think if you are on your feminine journey, you should probably just learn the differences between men and women, period. Like psychologically, how we think, how we operate, how we look at the world, because it's totally different, and then it'll help you relate to men better. But I'll get to that momentarily. Let's talk about masculine and feminine energy first. So many of us have been taught to be over masculinized for certain reasons. So we've gone on overdrive with the masculine energy. What is the masculine energy? It's the achievement, it's the working, it's the getting result, it's going out and hustling every day. It's the forward direction, it's the planning, it's the moving things forward. That's the masculine. Do we have that? Can we do that as women? Can we co-opt that? Of course, right? But most women would feel much better in their feminine energy. What is the feminine energy? It's being receptive. It's being more, it's more about like the intangible things, right? Like if you look at relationships and you're like, okay, well, what do men bring to a relationship? If we're looking at the traditionally masculine things, then it's, provision in the form of money, housing, protection. It's being the head of the household, moving things forward, moving the relationship forward, things like that, right? It's like having a goal and hitting it. It's warrior. It's those kinds of things. And if we look at the feminine, it's more of the intangible. It's more of the inner world. It's more of the inner realms. It's more of they're the keeper of the relationship, for example. So learning where that energy lies and how you can cultivate more of that feminine energy. How can you cultivate more of that feminine energy? Leaning back, stop solving everybody else's problems, right? Let them solve the problems for you. Maybe it is things that move you from being so much in your head to moving more into your body. That looks like different things for different people. It could be dancing, it could be painting, it could be a form of exercise that's more sensual. There's meditations, there's all kinds of things that you can do in order to start taking all that energy from being up here in your head, which is a very masculine thing, and moving it more down into your body and becoming more relaxed. It could be gardening. that's very helpful for a lot of women in terms of bringing them back down into their bodies. And I can do other videos on the different ways to bring back your feminine energy, but good place to start in terms of your feminine journey. And then, as I was saying, I think one of the things that's super helpful is just on your feminine journey, learning the differences between how women operate and men operate, because we do not operate in the same way. We are meant to be complementary to each other. And a big mistake that a lot of women make is either they see their spouses, partners, men as the enemy, thanks feminism, which is not helpful at all when you are in relationship, because the culture has started to pit the sexes against each other, and that's not healthy at all in terms of having a functioning society. Or the other thing that happens is it's not that extreme. Sometimes it's as simple as women think that men operate the same way women do, and they don't. So I'll give you an example of where this shows up quite a lot, but I would encourage you to do your own research to learn the differences between men and women. But here's an example that comes up a lot. A lot of women will start to, like, let's say that you want your man to be the provider and you want your man to step up in that department and be more of the leader. Well, the man starts to do that, right? And they start taking on more of the financial responsibility. They start leading more. They start helping more around the house, fixing problems more. And then the woman starts to feel very guilty about it. Like, oh my God, I feel so bad for him. Because the thing is that all of those things would be a burden to us as feminine women. However, they're not a burden to a masculine man. In fact, it's what helps build a masculine man, because a woman's, I want to say mission, but a woman's maybe lesson in life is more about how do I release control and how do I receive and how am I more in pleasure and how do I surrender. A man's mission or lesson in life is the exact opposite. It's about how do I take on more responsibility. So what happens is that us feminine women see well, first of all, a lot of women are walking around overly responsible and overly functioning, which is causing all kinds of issues everywhere. But once you've established that and you're trying to, for example, recalibrate the energy in a relationship, for example, and you want him to become more masculine, we start to feel bad for him. And we're like, no, that's so terrible, because again, it's a burden to us, but that doesn't mean it's a burden to men. Another way of looking at it is that to a man, respect equals love, right? To a woman, it's more about praise equals love. So if you see a man praising his woman, she lights up. If you see a woman respecting and appreciating her man, he lights up. Two totally different things. Like a woman, I mean, yes, respect is important to a woman, but it's more about the praise. And with a man, he doesn't care about being praised. He wants respect more than anything. So that would be another way in which men or women are totally different. And one thing that was very helpful to me in my own feminine journey was really starting to understand how men and women operate differently and where I might be falsely assuming that a man operates the same way that a woman does and that he thinks the same way that I do and that he sees the world and relationships and everything in the same way I do, because we don't. It's like the book, Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Like, we do not see the world in the same way. We do not operate in the same way. We do not communicate in the same way. We don't have the same shadows, and we don't have the same lessons in life. So if you're going to go on your feminine journey, really helpful to learn those things, very helpful in relationship, very helpful with learning how to operate in this world as a feminine woman, and also how to relate to the opposite sex and how they operate. So these are some of the places where you can start your feminine journey. You might notice it's a little bit different than what other people say on videos, because other people are quite surface level in what they're teaching. And the reality is that, relationship, polarity, dynamics, feminine energy, masculine energy, I mean, there's whole schools of thought like Tantra who go really deep into this stuff, because it's not a surface level topic. It's something that's very deep and a lifelong practice. So if you're going to do it right, you really have to start going in internal and going deeper than the surface level stuff of, what do I text a man? Or how do I manipulate a man? or what do I say to get him to do this? It's so much deeper than that, which is why this video might have been a little bit different than some of the other ones that you've seen in terms of how to start your feminine journey. So I hope you found this very helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Let me know what the best takeaway was for you in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video. We'll catch you on the next one. And don't forget to check out all the free resources, other videos, and courses and classes that we have available on these subjects in case you want to take things even further and go deeper than what we're able to do in these YouTube videos. Thank you so much for giving me your time today. I really appreciate it, and I will catch you on the next one.